Welcome to a broadcast of the recent Lorain County Commissioners' General Meeting. Unless otherwise announced, meetings are held Wednesday morning at 9:30 at the Administration Building, 226 Middle Avenue, 4th floor, downtown Elyria. These are public meetings and you are invited to attend. Agendas are posted prior to the meeting at www.loraincounty.us. Click on Departments to see the Commissioners page, then click on View Agenda.
Well, good morning, everyone. If you'll stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And our prayer this morning comes from Corinthians. God's wisdom is something mysterious that goes deep into the interior of his purpose. You don't find it lying around on the surface. It's not the latest message, but more like the oldest, what God determined as the way to bring out his best in all of us long before we ever arrived on the scene. I understand Commissioner Kokoski has our dog this morning.
Oh boy, what a treat we have here. She is just adorable. She is going to make somebody a great dog. Look at her. She just, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? She's so cute. She will be available tomorrow. She's about 6 months to a year old. So come down to the dog kennel, pick her up, take her home. She makes somebody a great pet. Look at that face, beautiful color. So come on down. Thank you. Come on.
Okay, Madam Clerk, we'd like to move to the top of our meeting, item number 12 on our agenda today.
Okay, number 12, enter into a joint resolution for the location of Lorain County Adult Probation Department.
Yeah, so move.
Second.
Any discussion?
I just wanted to state that we've enjoyed working with the judges on putting together an agreement that will help to preserve the history of the old courthouse. I know that's always been our cornerstone symbol of this county, and this is certainly a way of doing that. The important thing is, having to find a government function that takes place that legitimizes the investment that's going to be made, and certainly by putting the adult probation in there, that in upgrading the facilities, that will justify our investment, but we couldn't have done this without working in partnership with our judges, and want to thank them for working with us to preserve an important part of Lorain County history. And we have a memo of understanding here, a joint resolution that we're going to sign, and after we sign it, I'd like to ask the judges come up and take a photo with us. We consider this to be quite a historic day to preserve an important part of Lorain County history, and a strong partnership in working with our judges on this project moving forward. Any other comments? Okay, we'll take the vote and then sign.
Sure.
Mr.
Okay.
Lundy.
Aye.
Mr. Kalo.
Aye.
Ms. Kokoski.
Aye.
Okay.
Anything from the judges?
Sure. We're going to sign first. Okay. Okay, if we can invite the judges up, we'd like to take a photo with you if we could. And judges, if you'd like to make any comments, maybe before we take the photo.
Not all of us could be here. It's a criminal day over at the courthouse, so we regret that not all of us were able to attend this morning. I want to, I guess I would say that, first of all, the initiator with regard to this is Commissioner Lundy, and so I appreciate his effort in that regard. Clearly, when he approached us with regard to an attempt to resolve these issues, He also had, obviously, the approval and agreement of the other commissioners, and so I thank the commissioners for their support in this regard. I also want to specifically commend Mr. Ennis, Mr. Cordes, and Mr. Luby from our offices. A number of issues had to get resolved over the last few months, and in particular, those have been mediated very well, although I think they were kind of not so certain that their role was important, but I certainly realized that, and our judges did, that they were very important in getting this accomplished, because as you knew, there was a couple issues we needed to get resolved. It took us some time in that regard, but with their efforts and assistance, we were able to get that done. And so although it's an agreement between us and you folks, the other judges in that building had to come to certain agreements with regard to the use of portions of that building. And so I don't want to discount their support with regard to this. All the members of the Justice Center really were involved, with the prosecutor's office also involved, probate court, domestic relations, and juvenile. I suppose from our perspective, there's two times you celebrate something like this: at the front end when you get an agreement, and at the back end when you get it done. And I think we know that there's going to be a lot of work in between. There's going to be some upheaval in our probation department as we go through this remodeling process, and so we hope to continue the good working relationship with the commissioners and the administration to be able to accomplish that with the least amount of conflict and difficulty at the work site. So thank you for your efforts.
Thank you. I just echo Judge Bedlesky's comments.
Okay.
Wow.
Ditto.
Yeah, we'll come down.
No, you did just fine.
I'm happy about that. Happy about that. Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, and as was, pointed out, the county administrator, the assistant prosecutor, put a lot of late night oil into this to make the deal come together, and I know the residents at home, you don't really get to see the behind the scenes activities that take place, but if the public only knew that the hours that are put in by people who work in county government, our county administrator and our assistant prosecutor, who both you guys amaze me all the time, the workload that you have and the heavy lifting you do. And I know it took a lot of time to bring things together, and but I just want to thank the judges, the administrator, the assistant prosecutor, and Mr. Luby and the whole staff for making this possible. It's truly an important day in our county's history. Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess we'll return to the normal order of business.
Investments.
So move.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Lundy,
Aye.
Mr. Kalo?
Aye.
Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Appropriations.
So move.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Lundy,
Aye.
Mr. Kalo?
Aye.
Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Transfers.
So move.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Lundy,
Aye.
Mr. Kalo?
Aye.
Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
No advances, no requisite, or payments, requisitions.
So move.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Lundy,
Aye.
Mr. Kalo?
Aye.
Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Travel.
So move.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Lundy,
Aye.
Mr. Kalo?
Aye.
Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Bills.
So move.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Lundy,
Aye.
Mr. Kalo?
Aye.
Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Authorize various personnel actions as indicated on the summary sheet for employees within jurisdiction of Lorain County Commissioners.
Mr. Cortez.
Thank you, Commissioner Lundy.
I'm learning my new role. I notice he doesn't jump until I give him a cue, so.
Yeah, I'm kind of like the dog you got sprayed out in the front, Throw me a biscuit. I do have a few personnel issues, potential hire, Job and Family Services, 911. I don't think it should be long this morning, but I want to talk about those and maybe an update on where we are with our labor negotiations. As you know, we have 2 contracts open now. Well, actually, we have 5 steelworker contracts open and that we're working on the issues together with. That's the recorder's office, treasurer, auditor, et cetera, and also Children's Services. United Auto Worker contract now is getting set to be negotiated. So we have some time, maybe we'll brief over that. It's not that important at this point, but we may talk about that. And potential sale and purchase of real estate. All three of those topics are allowable under the Sunshine Act for executive session discussions. So I'd ask at the conclusion of our regular board meetings that we go into executive session and we talk about those items that I've specified. Thank you.
Approve and waive the reading of the minutes of February 17th.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Enter in a first amendment to agreement for the treatment of tuberculosis with Mercy Health Regional Medical Center, Lorain. Said amendment is to reflect agreement is effective until December 31st, 2018, containing a 60-day cancellation clause, revised suite 318, and annual payment $340,000.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
Mr. Cordez, would you like to
Sure, I
update us
can brief on
how
this.
works?
This will be our second contract with Mercy concerning TB services. Back 3 years ago, we undertook, for efficiency purposes, to restructure the way tuberculosis services were provided in Lorain County. Let me say for the folks that occasionally pop in and look at our meeting, that the Ohio Revised Code commands the Board of Commissioners to pay for tuberculosis services. A lot of people think in this day and age, TB, it's rare. How many cases could there be? Why are we spending money on it? Well, it is rare, but it's still a serious health issue that could get out of control very easily. There are resistant strains of TB out there that don't actually respond very well to the best treatments we have still. So you have to care for the residents that get TB, and you have to pay for those services that they need. Hence, we have a levy that supports that. 3 years ago, we found it more efficient to deliver the services in a public-private partnership using the infectious disease services provided at Mercy Hospital. It was a kind of a difficult challenge for us. We had to dismantle the TB board and the TB clinic that was out on Murray Road. There was a lot of heartache and heartburn with some of those decisions, but we were able to reduce by 52% the amount of money it was costing the residents to produce these services to the citizens that required help with TB in Lorain County.
Hence, we reduced the amount
And
of
yes,
the levy.
and so thereafter we reduced the levy by about 40%. So it was really a great opportunity to demonstrate that government can run more efficient and can get public-private partnerships that do work.
And reduce taxes sometimes.
And reduce taxes sometimes. I was pretty pleased with the way things have worked with Mercy. I meet with them once or twice a year. We get updates on what's going on. 2 years ago, we had a significant case where we had to quarantine somebody for a lengthy amount of time, finding an apartment that would take them, and the person was transient, so keeping them from leaving and staying in quarantine was really challenging. And Mercy,
That wasn't several days, that was several months.
several months.
Right.
Very strong resistant strain of TB that we had to deal with. Mercy really rose to the challenge, dealt with that whole issue. We didn't have to deal with any of that. I was involved because those things were supplements that are in addition to our contract. So I was looking at the cost, trying to control cost. They did a great job. The contract expired at the end of last year. We had some conversations, and we're journalizing it now. They asked for a 6% increase. Now let me explain. The 6% is over another 3 years. It's not 6% per year. It's 6% for the whole 3 years. And the first 3 years they had a fixed price and they had no increases in that. I think they've done a great job. I think their request is very reasonable. I'm very happy with the partnership. And it's a good time for us to have this conversation because I'm going to be asking to have the levy placed on the November ballot soon because it expires next year. That's really all I can say about it, and I hope you would continue this relationship, and I hope it continues very well into the future.
Dr. Murray does a very good job. I had the opportunity to talk to him. He does a really good job running infectious disease.
Mm-hmm. And just for the record, the reason it's at Mercy is because at the time, and maybe still, Elyria, which was EMH at that point, did not have an infectious disease program department there, so it only left us with the one option.
Great.
Very good.
Thank you.
Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Authorized payment of $963.63 to Andrus Crematory and Funeral Home, Lorain, for indigent veteran Robert John Thomas, Elyria, in accordance with the Ohio Revised Code 5901.29.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Under the airport, approved change order number 2 to Smith Paving and Excavating, Norwalk, in a net decrease of $88,891.68 for the rehab public apron project at the airport. This will reduce contract to $1,233,472.77, which consists of adjustment of increased temporary pavement quantities into existing pavement and reduction in planned quantities to existing field conditions.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
No, Jim, this is the money we had rolled up for years. This lowers our participation also.
Well, actually, a couple things. This really wasn't the roll-up money. We used that on another project. We did roll it up for 3 years, the $150,000 we got. That was a different project that we used. This was a supplemental funding that we received for the public apron.
This is when we had to bid out ahead of time
Yes.
and then submit. Okay,
Exactly.
all right then. Thank you.
This was additional funding from the FAA.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say that our facilities manager, Karen Davis, does a great job working with the FAA.
Mm-hmm.
I work with them, but she does all the paperwork. And I got to tell you, nobody's got anything on the federal government when it comes to paperwork. I'm talking about stacks and stacks of. It's just somewhat ridiculous, the amount of paperwork. But she keeps me right with that paperwork, and I have to say that here. So that burden is hers. She does a great job also, with the projects out there. That additional money was really nice. The board had to come up with matching money on that at a lean time. But how do you walk away from so much federal money? There's two things going to go on right now. One of them is kind of troubling to me. This $88,000, I've tried to repurpose it out at the airport, and the FAA has told me no, it's project specific. So while we saved some money on the project and brought it in lean, the money goes back to the Fed. They won't let us keep it to do something else. But we still did our job, and we did it well, and we were able to control project costs to a degree that we're returning some of that money. I had wished it would stay here. We could really use it on other projects. Secondly, after talking to our managers in Detroit, there's going to be availability of close to $3 million, we believe, very soon for taxiway and runway work that needs to be done in the near future. Now, that's really happy news. Let me tell you the sad news. The sad news is the match money that we're going to need to match that money. You're not obligated to take the money. However, the work will eventually have to be done. If you don't take the money when it's available to do the work, and the pavement conditions continue to deteriorate, they'll just order us sometime in the next few years to do the work. We don't have a choice in that matter. Okay? And at that point, the funding may not be available to do the work, and that may be on your pocket, your ticket. So it's a bit of a really frustrating work environment, and I think this is going to be 90-10 money at best. So we're looking at about $300,000 that we're going to. We don't have $300,000 right now. Remembering that for the people out there, again, like I explained the TB relationship, let me explain the relationship for FAA. You're married from 20 years from the last federal dollar you took. Not the first, not the second, but the last one. So, last year we did a nice bear hug with them, and they own us for another 20 years. Mm-hmm. And the $150,000 minimum we get every year, in addition to the supplements, we can't make up locally. But we're just not able to survive without that maintenance money out there at the airport. So we're in addictive services, and I don't know how to break that chain. Unless we get local funding, which I don't see coming, local support for the airport, I don't see coming. Right now, the general fund has gone from a high of $600,000 to $700,000, sometimes a little more than that, back in the early 2000s. We've been running the airport for the last 6 years on $50,000 from the general fund, and I think we do a pretty good job. The grass gets cut; it doesn't get cut all the way to the fence line, but it gets cut. Everything's safe out there. We've been able to make small progress, but nothing huge. But the gates are still open. The work's still getting done. The FAA isn't down here demanding that we do a lot of different things. I'd like to have a lot more money to maybe propel the airport forward better. I know that funds are not available right now, but we're going to have to work real hard to figure out what we're going to do with this additional money on this pavement rehab that's going to be presented to us later in the year. Sorry to give you that bad news. It's good news and bad news, but that's the reality. And for the folks that think that we pump all this money into the airport, occasionally I see some postings or discontentment about, the airport was $600,000 or $700,000. Why are we putting that much money in there? We're not. We put $50,000 plus sometimes matching some grant monies when they become available. We're growing corn on the roof of buildings out there. Farming brings in our #1 revenue. That our #1 revenue source is farming. And we have put every square inch of plowable land into use out there. And then, of course, we get revenue from the FBO. We get a partial sharing. We have that leased out in a public-private cooperative. So we raise money there from the tie-downs and the fuel, et cetera. And then lastly, we have a public-private partnership for maintaining the airport. We don't use public employees on that. We use private sector employees on that. But we are not putting these big dollars. The money that's out there is either grant money and/or money that's generated at the airport, and we supplement that with about $50,000 from the general fund. So people don't have to be happy with the airport. I just would like them to understand the financial structure of how it exists a little better, and they may not be as dissatisfied with what we're doing here.
And we can't close it, and we've already tried.
Well, you sent me to Chicago as the sacrificial lamb, and remember I came back, and in fact I wrecked one of the county cars in a snowstorm coming back from Chicago in a blizzard where they flew people in from Washington and Detroit, and they had about 12 lawyers over there, and it was me and Ron Twiney and Karen Davis and a notepad, and they had big laptops, and it's really kind of interesting. And but we knew they were going to beat us into submission, but we had to try to do that. We had to demonstrate that we tried every option because, quite frankly, a lot of people believe the airport should close, and we shouldn't be having that airport out there. The FAA will never let you close that airport, Commissioners. They consider it a reliever airport. I don't know what we're relieving, quite frankly. I've asked that question many times. Their position is that if there was a big crisis, they would have to use us to land the smaller planes that would clog up the airspace over the larger airports. I think that's their position with regard to reliever. About 7 years ago, they passed new regulations with regard to firefighting equipment that had to be on every airport and to be 24/7. Now, we had and still have an arrangement with Oberlin and how to respond to crises at the airport should we have a crash or a fire. However, they've upped the ante with that without giving us any money. It was going to cost us about $250,000 to man, get the equipment, have a new building out there with all the equipment in it. We just couldn't afford it, so we're not able to do charter anymore out of our airport, because if you want to do charter, you got to have the certificate, you got to have the firefighting equipment on station at the airport. It's just terrible that they keep changing the requirements and they don't fund those changes. I'm not going to call it an unfunded mandate because we weren't mandated to do it, but we lost a component that we could have made some funds for the airport off of, and that was charter. There was some small amount of charter coming out of there, and now there's no charter coming out of there. So it's very, very tough keeping the gates open out there.
Yeah, this is just another example of the struggles that we are facing as a county. The popular mantra out there is cut, cut, cut. You see that in the letters to the editor and when you run into people out in the public, but the reality is we're into the bone. And I always try to tell people that I think the greatest example that we're really struggling is when you can't make tax dollars grow. And that's something that's hardly ever talked about. Everybody talks about, well, we cut this, we cut that. But when you have to tell the public, I mean, if I showed up at your front door and said, give me $10, I'm going to give you $90 back, you'd hope that I'd show up every single day and do that for you. Or I'm going to show up at your door and say, give me 20, I'm going to give you $80. But things are so tough now that we can't even come up with that $10 or $20, our 10% or our 20%. And the FAA is, that's certainly always the best one with the 90-10. But the $1 million, we got to come up with 100,000. In the case of the $3 million, the 300,000, and then we struggle to even come up with that money. So that, it's just an example of how difficult things are, even with transit dollars, struggling to be able to put money on the table. And everybody talks about, we want you guys to go out and get grants. We want to go out and get grants too. But every time we have to come up with a match, we got to figure out where the money's coming from.
Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Under Community Development, award various contracts for homeowners to receive grant assistance from CHIP Program Year 14 home owner rehab and home repair activities that include contingencies for any unforeseen change orders. One, Gen Met Construction Lorain in the amount of $31,099 for Dorothy L. Preet at 4875 Northwood Drive, Sheffield Lake, for various home repairs to be paid from the CHIP Program Year 14 home account. And Premier Sewer and Drain North Ridgeville in the amount of $1,870 for Etta O. Chase at 100 Lucas Street, Overland, for water line replacement to be paid for out of the CHIP FY Ohio Housing Trust account.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Under Solid Waste, universal waiver for political subdivision out-of-county disposal of sewage sludge. This will eliminate need for political subdivision within the county to apply for a waiver or pay waiver fees as required by Section 6F in 2016 through 25 ratified waste management plan update.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion.
The Commissioners, excuse me. I asked for this to be placed on the agenda and to have a policy crafted. I just thought it was a little ridiculous that we were piecemealing this, and each entity had to make a application, and sometimes they forgot, and it was really chaotic. And I told Bailey that if we're going to approve these waivers anyway, let's just put a policy together and do it one time, rather than all this administrative nightmare of people submitting it, multiple resolutions, multiple submissions. So I think this is going to make it a little bit better for the folks out there and for us administratively. And then this will be looked at again at when the next plan, which I always think is a long way off, but it always seems to be just around the corner.
5-year plan starts in 3.5 years.
Yeah, and we'll start probably a year and a half out working on it.
Right.
So that issue can be looked at again with regard to the sludge waiver. And remembering that we're just helping some of our fellow political subdivisions out there because they're providing municipal services. And so I think this is a good partnership, and I'm glad we got away from every 3 or 4 weeks me seeing something and who forgot and should we waiver it. So thank you if you approve this, because it'll make the burden a lot less difficult for us.
Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Under the engineer, approve and enter in contracts with Solar Testing Labs, Inc., Brooklyn Heights, in the amount not to exceed $25,000 to provide general geotechnical and environmental engineering materials testing and construction inspection as a 12-month task order base to be paid for the MVGT engineer project account.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion. Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Actually, this one is approve and enter in a contract that's supposed to be geosci from Berea
Oh,
in the amount not to exceed $5,483 to provide general geotechnical and environmental engineering, materials testing, and construction inspection as a 12-month order task base for Mallard's Edge Subdivision Number 3, Eaton Township, to be paid from the MVGT engineer project account.
So moved.
second.
Discussion. Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Aye.
Mr. Cortez.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I just have one thing I'd like to add this morning. If you remember, we've been working on the Dewhurst Road project seemingly forever.
Or longer.
We had a problem with the outfall. It was eroding the bank. There was no immediate danger of the road falling in, but it was moving in that direction with Dewhurst Road. While it wasn't the commissioner's responsibility, we undertook this through the Stormwater District to assist Carlisle Township with Dewhurst Road. You know, it had many struggles from the landowner to the EPA to the Army Corps of Engineers and it really just got out of hand. And we sat down and we came up with a way of working in a public-private ownership partnership for us to fund the repair of the area there vis-a-vis the landowner, a cooperative landowner that was already doing some work back there. It was new for us. It was a new way of doing business, and I'm pleased to tell you I have now received a report, and it's appropriate with all the rain that's been coming down from Bill Holtzman, and I'll read a section from his report. Says, the work exceeds the expectation of the original proposal, and we recommend the final payment be made. I have some pictures here for you to look at. We'll be using this as our breakout when we do our report out to the unincorporated area during the month of March. But if we really, really think hard and we put the effort into it, we can find partnerships that'll produce value and get the job done. I want to thank Don Romanchik for staying in the queue, Carlisle Township, the homeowner, the contractor. Everybody had to do a lot of original thinking to get this done, and the improvements are such back there, we're not going to have to worry about this for decades to come. And Carlisle Township's here. I hope they're happy with the outcome.
Shaking their head, yes.
And the county engineers department has done a superb job supporting all that work out there too. That's all I have. Sometimes we don't talk about the original way or unoriginal way we do some things, but we get out there and we make things happen.
Beautiful.
Mr. Ennis?
Commissioners, I have 3 matters of pending litigation to discuss with you in executive session.
Commissioners report.
Well, I've been working on a few things, but nothing really that I'm ready to report on yet, so I will pass.
Commissioners Association Board met on Friday. A lot of discussion in the legislation that's coming up. There are 12 different sales tax exclusion changes in different forms of bills. Anywhere from the 3-day holidays to excluding certain items from being taxable. So that's a major concern, what the impact will be if it gets through in regards to all of our county budgets and the states also, because the state last year was the first time ever more sales tax went into the fund than income tax. So a whole changeover where they've been coming across on what has always historically been the county's revenue source sales tax. The state is now changing to the same formula. Also met with Mr. Cordez after a meeting, some changes in the way workforce development's being done with the Ohio Department of Job and Family Services, 80-20, 80% TANF money, 20% WIOA money. If you want to expand a little bit, Jim, we met the other day on it, and you've been working with.
In fact, Commissioner, I have it here. I met yesterday with Mike Longo and Mary Lugolsky to go over it. It's really interesting. It's the CCMEP.
Mm-hmm.
It's that comprehensive case management and employment. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get people to work. They're trying to, especially people that are on assistance. There's work programs now that have to be. They're mandated to go into work programs. A little thing aside from that we're doing right now, and I informed you that the Port Authority is actually doing a build out inside the building over on Abbey Road. We're working in collaboration with Job and Family Services. There's a group that can put folks that are mandated to work. They bring the work in, and they if I'm doing packaging or loading, and so we're preparing about 5,000 to 6,000 square feet out there, a building in a building, so to speak. The ROI on that is 3 years. We have a 3-year contract with Job and Family Services and this company to provide job experience and work for these folks. And of course, the build out will be paid for at the end of that 3 years, and we hope to go further than that. It's a good partnership. It's one that I hope bears a lot of fruit for Lorain County, because we are now required to find work and help these people get that work so they get the benefits that they need. So I'll have more on that with you coming up. We're doing a design build out there. I hope to be up and running in a handful of months. We're really trying to shorten down the whole bureaucratic process to go from here to there in light speed. It's going to take those kind of creative partnerships when we start doing the comprehensive case management. Not everybody will be mandated, but a lot will be, and then we got to chase the ones that aren't. there's a lot of unanswered questions, Commissioner, with
Well,
regard
the
to...
rules aren't out yet. They're asking for
Exactly.
designation by March 1st, May 15th at the latest, and they haven't let the rules out to everyone.
I have a truckload of concerns yet that have to be answered before I can give you a recommendation to chew on a little bit. The state actually thought it was going to get a waiver. It doesn't appear that they're going to get the waiver. Quite frankly, I honestly think that it's being held up because of the election season this year. You don't want to come out with, and I'll say bluntly, you don't want to come out with a governor running from this state that's asked for a certain amount of waiver at a DOL and make it a campaign issue. I don't think we're going to see any review of that waiver until well into later into this year, or if the political landscape changes. So that makes it even more confusing. On top of that, Area 7, the huge area, DOL hasn't ruled on that, but I'm beginning more and more to believe Area 7 is going to be able to maintain its independence. My hallway discussions indicate to me if that happens, the state will back off the consolidation process with all of the independent Ohio Means Job Centers. We're Area 4. That would mean we would stay Area 4. We would stay independent if they do that. Of course, we also huffed and puffed a little bit and said, if Area 7 loses their appeal, then we're going to file. And we're going to go right back down that road. And of course, then if we lost, then Area 11 was going to file. We just weren't going to tolerate the state demanding things that the local level should be deciding for the community. So I think there's a lot of pushing and pulling going on, but I'm hoping that dust settles. But I don't expect to see that ruling out of DOL anytime soon. So that's going to leave that turmoil out there. There's just so much going on right now, and then trying to comply with the new WIOLA regulations themselves, and the state hasn't clarified its position on a lot of stuff. Quite frankly, we have a few of our things that are kind of disjointed right now. They're a little bit out of compliance with WIOLA, but it's hard not to be out of compliance because the state hasn't changed the way they want to do business. So we're waiting before we shift. Nothing's worse than shifting program 3 or 4 times.
Right.
We know changes are coming, and we're not going to be resistant to those changes. I don't want to change it 4 times. I want to change it once and then try to make it work, because it's how we deliver services and how boards are structured. You know, we're restructuring the whole WIB board right now. The balance on the WIB board has become very, very challenging. It used to be that you had 51% or more private sector, and you had the rest were nonprofits, public, etc. Now they've broken the categories into faith-based, nonprofit, labor, public. So every time you move one, the whole chessboard starts to move, and it's almost impossible to continuously balance the WIB board so you're not out of compliance. Sometimes breaking it into smaller pieces isn't the answer. It just makes it more confusing and complicated. So I will be bringing you back a lot more over the next several weeks. I just ask for your patience while that occurs. I do believe that we're probably going to, more than likely going to move it into workforce development rather than job and family services. But until we get the clearer guidance, I think the prudent thing is to wait longer. And we do have until May
15th, right?
They were trying to get us to do it at the end of February, beginning of March. I have no idea why they're pushing us when we don't have the guidance.
Well, the program starts July 1, and there's going to be no waiver or holdback on that. Is what we're hearing out of the legislature and out of the governor's office. So.
Well, you know, remembering that the state does things that are not in compliance with the WIOLA Act. They did things that weren't in compliance with the WIA Act, and it got us into a whole bunch of trouble. So, you know, one of those is this Area 7 problem, because Area 7 actually, while it doesn't make sense to me, it does meet all of the stated criteria under the WIOLA Act to maintain its independence, and the state said, no, you can't. So they lost the appeal with the state, so they appealed to DOL. The state simply can't disregard federal regulation and do what they want, because there's going to be consequence for that. Remember, several years ago, the state was sanctioned because they were out of compliance with a lot of things to do with Medicaid and with workforce development. And so we lost a lot of funding in the state because of non-compliance with the federal regulations, because their plan did not come into conformity. Hopefully we won't see that kind of imbalance again and think that we're going to be able to, you know, ride rough over the federal government, because they just turn off the spigot of funds. Learned a
I'll
long time
show
ago,
you.
the guy's got the wallet, really, at the end of the day, is the one buying the gas, and without that, you're not going to travel very far. So, thanks for asking. There's a lot of work ahead of us here still.
Also, I attended Lorain NAACP dinner on Saturday. Congratulations to Joanne Eldridge, Lorain Library System, who was honored that evening. It was a nice event. Myself and Commissioner Lundy were there. So, end of my report.
Of course, we had our Stormwater District meeting, the $400,000 in grants available for projects throughout the county. That's an initiative where we've actually doubled our efforts. And I'd like to thank everyone involved with that, Don and Jerry and Jim and the whole group. It's making a lot of progress. I know the township trustees are happy about the progress that's being made in that area. Had a chance to speak to the Men's Fellowship Breakfast in North Ridgeville on last Thursday and told them about all the money we have in county government and all the money that's coming in from Columbus and Washington. No. But it was good. It was an interesting discussion, and I always appreciate the opportunity to inform people about how government really works and give them a dose of reality as to our less than favorable financial picture for the future. Attended the Township Association meeting at Columbia Station. Grace Galucci, the director of NOACA, had a chance to speak there. Thought Grace did an excellent job talking with the townships about the assistance that NOACA can provide to them. Also attended the Cameco Town Hall, which took place on Saturday in Lorain, and heard a lot of stories by workers very concerned about safety in the workplace there, and certainly support their right to organize in collective bargaining. And the Lorain NAACP dinner, as Commissioner Kalo pointed out, Joanne Eldridge. I think every place I go, a community event, seems like she's always there. And yeah, her and Daryl, and the libraries. Obviously playing a very important role in our communities, and I know they've got several initiatives out there right now, and early voting has started. No excuse not to vote. Remember, when you vote, you get to complain, right? So get out and vote. That completes my report.
Next Tuesday, March 1st at 9:30, the commissioners will meet and go orphanage ditch hearing, and then at 11 o'clock we'll have our land bank meeting.
Is that, you did the viewing on that already?
Yeah, this is the last hearing.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Gorge.
Gore Orphanage.
This is going on so long, I
Yeah.
can't remember
We've
what we
actually
did.
viewed it twice.
Okay.
I was
Actually,
late.
3
I was
times.
late the
That's
second
right.
time.
I viewed it twice.
Did you go out there in your wingtips again?
No, actually, I wasn't that day, so.
Lori, remember the time he was walking around in the water in the mud with his dress shoes on?
I had other meetings to go to. What can I tell you, man? It washes off.
Board correspondence?
I move to waive the reading and approve the board correspondence.
Second.
Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Mr. Kayla?
Aye.
Ms. Kowski?
Aye.
Public comment?
Anyone here for public comment? Seeing none, I move to
This
Oh,
gentleman
I'm
wants-
sorry.
Individual issue or
Yep.
comment on?
If you want to comment on anything, this is public comment period. If you'll please come up to the podium there, give us your name and address. Sorry, I didn't see your hand go up.
My name is Dave Meerdink. I own some properties in Lorain and Elyria, and I just had a general concern about the tax valuation process for my properties. I've been kind of in an ongoing battle for about 8 years, back and forth with the auditor, the BOR, the state BTA, which at times have set the values for my properties, and then in subsequent periods raised them 200%, 300%, 400% in value. I've got a sheet that kind of outlines a history of that. If you have a quick minute, I won't take a lot of time. I just wanted to.
Do you have one for each of us?
I've got a few of them.
Okay.
Thank you.
That gives the year and the year and the tax value for each year. So this is a sample of 3 of the properties that I have. So, for instance, in 2008, the value of that first property is at $103,000. the BOR in 2009 brought it down to 16.1 that I had paid for it and my rehab costs. In the next period, it was raised back up to 70,000. I appealed to the State Board of Tax Appeal in 2011, and they brought it back down to 13.3. In the subsequent years after that, it's been cranked up to 70,500. I went to the BOR in 2014 and put in appraisals that I had paid for from a professional appraiser. The appraisal amount is right under the property address. They pretty much dismissed the appraisals or said they just didn't have jurisdiction on the case, so that case now is with the state BTA, and I'm waiting for that hearing. In this past fall, the auditor had an open, informal hearing for properties. I brought these appraisals there also. Basically, the appraiser, again, dismissed them as not relevant, or I don't know, just not really a good reason at all. I appealed to the auditor. He kind of he got with the appraiser and called me and just said, well, here's what the appraiser says. So, you know, I'm trying to provide low-income housing in these cities, in these rough areas of these cities. And when it comes to the appeals process, I'm trying to, you know, get appraisals that I pay for, and they seem to not be recognized. And, you know, I don't know why there isn't more you know, kind of reasonable negotiation on these things, because the values are just way out of line with any kind of comparable sales that I can find. And obviously I have, you know, professional appraiser providing these appraisals, and I'm spending a lot of money with that and attorneys to do these appeals, and I just don't feel, you know, that the auditor and or appraisal department is really, and the BOR in a lot of ways, is really recognizing these legitimate appraisals. And now I know that the prosecutor, you know, I have fallen behind in taxes because I've been waiting for these cases and they, you know, what the true bill will be. So I've fallen behind into some of the taxes, and now I'm kind of at the mercy of the prosecutor, who's now pushing to obviously collect these back taxes, but they're based on these values that I feel are way overinflated, and it's just making it very tough to maintain these rental properties. You know, with you know, I understand that the county has budget concerns, but you know, I've got budget concerns too, trying to make these houses you know, affordable and still make it viable for me to provide those things. I know across the street from a lot of my properties, or next door, they're just buying the foreclosures and tearing them down. And you know, I understand that maybe gets rid of a blight or a, you know, a problem, but it doesn't add to housing or a tax base going forward. And if that property was worth nothing, how is my property worth, you know, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 next door to it? So that's my concern. For whatever, you know, whatever it's worth, it's, you know, I think it's a problem that I think you'll see the BOR is probably flooded, you know, with people with similar concerns. And I just, if I have a legitimate appraisal, I'd like some understanding that that's a professional opinion of value that generally was accepted by the BOR in the past and the BTA, but now it seems it's a little tougher to make that case. So,
Mr. Ennis, he's done everything that he can do to get these values lowered?
Well, you have some representatives,
Yeah.
if you want to speak to your
Right.
representatives
Yeah.
on the Board of Revision and
That's what I was going to say, as far as
express that concern to them.
As far as jurisdiction, it's not really our jurisdiction, but we do
Right.
have a representative to the BOR, so we can certainly bring it to the attention of our representative.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Should I check to follow up, or do you want my phone number?
Yeah, if you
Would
can,
you-
after the meeting, if you can leave that with the clerk and
I'll
can follow up.
I'll look into these,
Right.
get some information on them, and if you leave your information with the clerk, I don't know if I can get you any satisfaction, but I can certainly make an inquiry on your behalf. I have had other folks come in and indicate that they went through the BOR process, got a reduction, and thought the reduction was permanent, and then a year later, it went way back up. And I think that's what you're indicating has occurred.
I am to some extent, just
You have to talk at the mic.
the lack of, legitimizing the appraisals that I give. And then, of course, if you look in general, these areas of Lorain and Elyria in the next period have not appreciated 400%, 500%, 400%. They just haven't in general. So the question is, if you certify the value one year and
Well,
the
see-
next year the whole area didn't go up, how did it go up to
Well,
300%?
I can explain a little bit on some of that, and that has to do with speculation in the housing market. It's not unusual, and I think what I'm seeing here may be some of the practice they're following, so I'm just going to wing it here.
It's fine.
People go in, they speculate on deteriorated housing, and they buy them at a rock bottom sale, and then they invest in them and make them revenue-producing properties. And if they're revenue-producing properties, they have more value. And so to take a value, say you paid $10,000 for a depleted property, and you put $20,000 into it to bring it to code and rent it out, you can't continue to pay taxes on a $10,000 property forever into the future. So what they do is they give a temporary de-evaluation to that property while it's supposedly in rehab or being brought up to standards, and then the value goes back up. They don't have any way of knowing that that property has been done other than to raise the taxes back up, and hopefully the work has been done on that. You can see that if they didn't do that, lots of people would go out, buy a whole bunch of property, get it the valuation of what they bought it, invest in it, and then be producing a lot of rental income and being taxed at a substantially lower rate on the property value forever, or at least until the 10-year assessment came in. So there is a balancing act, and you may be honestly caught up in some of that back and forth, but I think there is a little bit of reasoning why that occurs, and I will try to find out a little more information on your property, but it would seem to me that that's where you're in that seesaw.
And I understand that. When I get an appraisal, that is the market value today, and it's another debate whether a rental property is going to be valued more than the properties next to it, just because it's on an income approach rather than a sales approach.
I understand.
And
I
they're
understand
not
frustration.
doing that, but they want to do that. They're sort of riding that fence, like they want to do that based on your income. But is it fair when you're sitting between two other homes that
true
are
enough.
owner-occupied?
True enough, and I'm not on the Board of Revision. I do talk to them once in a while, and we do have a representative. The Board of Commissioners has a representative, and I'll see if I can find a little information for you and
Okay.
be in contact.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else this morning? Okay, I move that we go into executive session to discuss personnel issues outlined by the county administrator and legal issues that were outlined by the assistant prosecutor.
Second.
Mr. Lundy.
Aye.
Mr. Kalo.
Aye.
Ms. Kowski.
Hi.
This has been a broadcast of the recent Lorain County Commissioners' General Meeting. Unless otherwise announced, meetings are held Wednesday morning at 9:30 at the Administration Building, 226 Middle Avenue, 4th floor, downtown Elyria. These are public meetings, and you are invited to attend. Agendas are posted prior to the meeting at www.loraincounty.us. Click on Departments to see the Commissioners page, then click on View Agenda for a printable copy of the agenda.